I'm calling into public session our business meeting, and we're going to first have a pledge of allegiance, and let's see, Dr. Gianni, if you lead.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
You're all welcome.
Emergency evacuation and meeting procedures. Everybody that's actually in the boardroom, make note of where the exit signs are so that if you have to leave, you know how to get out of the building quickly. No smoking anywhere on campus. And now we're up to the board consent agenda, where I need a motion to approve items C1 through C5. Is there a motion? Mr. Trent, seconded by Ms. Felice. Any questions or discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. It's unanimously approved.
We moved a little quickly on that. I just wanted to ask one quick question. I stand in favor
Okay.
of the motion.
Okay.
With respect to the treasurer's report, Dr. Gianni, are we looking at surpluses that we have? I know at the, as you were putting the budget together, and I realize, COVID takes precedent over everything right now, but we were talking about busing for the early childhood center. And so are we taking a look at those surpluses now to see if there's any funding available for that pre-K busing?
I'm going to interrupt because I think that gets us into the board discussion items,
Later.
maybe tangentially. But if you go down to board discussions at F3, it kind of stems from that. So can we hold your question since we've passed the items?
All right, that's the efficiency study?
Yes.
I didn't realize that was one of the same. Okay, that'll be fine.
Okay, good. So, next is communication and announcements with our superintendent's report.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to start off with how he's sitting here today. The public will notice that the board's returned to virtual attendance, except for myself, the clerk, and President Hayes, and of course my cabinet sitting in the audience. The last meeting, which was our reorganization meeting, so we moved to Zoom. We moved from Zoom to in-person for reorganizational purposes. It made it a lot easier for us. We did practice social distancing, of course. On July 6th, the governor issued an executive order which extends suspension portions of open meetings law until August 5th. So given this extension, we've returned to virtual attendance at this meeting and possibly future meetings, pending matters before the board and or future executive orders. We will continue to accept questions from the public via the district clerk, as we have had at previous meetings. I will ask public members to please get those questions in, not the day of, but at least the day before, so administration and the board can have the opportunity to look at those before responding to them. But I believe the two that we did get late today will be responded to in any event. The next item, and this past Monday, I held a virtual district-wide parent meeting with about 104 folks participating in the meeting. So it was rather well attended. It was at noon on Monday. And in my opinion, it went very well. I believe some of the trustees were on as observers, because I did see the names along, and certainly, after I'm done speaking, if you want to jump in, you can certainly do that. That meeting has been posted on the website. It's there right now. We did it just not too long ago. It was a little different because it was my first time recording the Zoom, and we needed to get somebody into my office to pull the file off and then put it to YouTube. But regarding the meeting, and as expected, our parents had many questions regarding reopening and I did attempt to answer all of them the best I can, but it was very clear that everybody's all over the place with regard to where we are reopening, and I understand that. I did promise to have another district-wide parent meeting because one thing I did mention, and as the board knows, we're coming to the end of what our structure is going to look like. And later tonight, I'll be talking about what I believe the committee is going to come back with and where we will ultimately land. So I did promise that once that information went out, I would hold another meeting. It was suggested that that meeting be in the evening, 7 o'clock, and of course I told parents I had no problem doing that. So I'm thinking that meeting will be at the end of first week in August, probably right after our August 5th meeting. And the board gets an opportunity to take a good look at what we're planning. I don't know, I know I offered if anybody wanted to jump in about the parent meeting. Oh, I don't want to cut anybody off.
I thought that, from my observation of the meeting, that it was very well received, and I think you got good marks for having done it. And I think your offer of having another one in August is good, and this may be another way to stay in touch with the community and have them feel that they're participating and involved in the whole process. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, it's funny. So you try to look at the bright side of things. Well, there's often the dull side. But one thing that did come from this is Zoom, right? And these virtual meetings and the opportunity to meet with many folks at one time. And I know the board knows throughout the closure, I was meeting with the faculty just about every Friday to let them know what was going on. And it was very, very well received. It was, I think we were probably a little over 300 folks every time tying in. So I didn't know if there was any other board members that wanted to comment before I move on. You want to pick
Ms. Ancona?
Yeah, thank you. I did want to say it was well received and to thank you, Dr. Gianni. And I think that the district's been asking a long time for town hall meetings, and this is a good platform to do them. I mean, we definitely have to, because of COVID right now, I'm concentrating on that, but I would like to see that done more in the future on other matters. And it was well received, even though there was a lot of unknowns. And you did promise them that you'll have more answers for them next time. And the 7 o'clock meeting time is definitely more appreciated, because I know even for myself it was hard at 12 o'clock to come on. So thank you.
Ms. Aruda?
To piggyback off of that, again, I want to thank you. I do think that it was well received. We had about 100 to 130, depending upon the moment. I know at a 7 o'clock event, especially in August, we'll probably have more. I appreciate your technology and really rolling with the punches with that, because I know that it can be very challenging. My suggestion moving forward, possibly gathering some questions before, this way you are not, and I understand what it's like to have those comments, those questions put in the repetitiveness. And then this way, maybe during your initial presentation, you can address those so that they're not pushed there, or even having somebody else to assist you in those questioning. I think you did a great job with doing it, but I do anticipate that we're going to have more people, and I can understand the challenges that might bring at a 7 o'clock meeting in August.
Yes, reading through the chat for questions was certainly a challenge, and it was the first time I've done it that way, because I should haven't done it. But yeah, good suggestion to ask for questions ahead of time. Thank you. Any others? Okay, then I'm going to move on with my final one, and that is regarding fall sports. New York State Public High School Athletic Association recently voted to delay the official start of fall 2020 sports season, and they also canceled the fall 2020 regional and state championships. One question did come back. The question was whether or not this affected middle school sports, and we did inquire on that, and yes, middle school and high school are scheduled to start the same date. So that's clear now. We posted that on our website, and you might want to go to the website because in the event the closure is extended, the association is prepared to implement a condensed schedule in January 2021 if high school sports and of course middle school sports are prohibited throughout 2020 due to COVID. And as I mentioned, those details are on our website. And that is all I have, President Hayes.
Did I understand you to say that there won't be fall sports at all for middle school or high school?
No, I'm sorry,
through the
it's
end
a
of the
delayed
year?
opening, and I didn't, oh, wait a second, I do have it. So the delayed opening is to, somebody help me, September 21st? September 21st, so it's been moved from August to September. So everything's scheduled to start then now. However, if there is a continued closure, they're prepared to condense all the seasons and start in January.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
But one question, how does this decision affect those extracurricular sporting groups that use our facilities? Are they permitted to still play?
So right now, they're not, unless we were to allow them to use our facilities. And my understanding is if we were to allow and permit use of our facilities, we are also required to ensure that those outside groups are following the guidelines. So taking care of the social distancing, we would be required to clean up, we would be required to disinfect. So we simply are not giving out any of our facilities at this time.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And that is all I have.
Oh, that's it?
For communications, yes.
Okay. So, are there any reports by trustees with regard to issues that you want to report on, or particularly your advisory committee roles? I'll try to do this alphabetically. Ms. Ancona?
No, not right now. We're meeting next week.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're all coming up, they'll all be.
Ms. Aruda? Nothing? Ms. Felice?
I have a few comments to make. Thank you, Madam President. This week and last week was training for new board trustees. And also I attended yesterday and today the Summer Law Conference sponsored by the New York State School Board Association. Lots of information, lots of communications to unpack. So I'm still in the process of writing my notes up from those meetings. But to Mr. Sheehan, there's a number of changes that occurred this year with respect to Title IX and sexual harassment complaints and requirements of the district. Also with reporting procedures for grievances for Title IX. Could you put together an advisory for the board on what it is we should pay attention to and have to consider going forward? And you can thank your partner or your senior partner, Mr. Gertka, who was the moderator on this particular subject.
Yes, certainly I can put something together for the board to provide guidance on that issue.
It even went so far as to say that it probably didn't fall under Title IX, but it was, or maybe it did. But even changes to the election law, for the clerk. And there's a clerk training coming up. I would encourage the district to support our clerk attending those trainings. I know we have in the past, but there's many, many changes on the horizon. And of course, changes with collective bargaining, many things that we have to consider going forward. Your memo from June 23rd, if anybody hasn't read it or hasn't read it in a while, I would recommend going over it again. And then you'll be updating, I assume, Mr. Sheehan, you'll be updating those COVID reopening plans as they change.
Almost on a daily basis.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, that's all I have for now, and then I'll finish the rest in our closings. Thank you.
Well, I have a question. Cheryl, when you finish unpacking your notes, can you get back to us about what you learned about the law conference?
Absolutely will. It was my intention. Gina knows that was my intention because I just wanted to share with the board, and I had planned on sharing it with Gina because she attended the training with me as well. But just to get what my take on it was, how it applies to our district, so yes, I will share that information with all.
Excellent, thank you.
There are PowerPoints that I could provide to the district, and we could put it up on in an area where the board could access it. If you find the need, I think it would be helpful.
Sure.
All right?
That's a good idea.
If you want to send them to me, we'll do that.
Okay, I will do that. Thank you.
Mr. Parker?
No.
Okay. I too participated in the summer law conference yesterday morning and this morning. And I'll echo Cheryl, it was an overwhelming amount of information and changes. And we need to look at things with different eyes now because of the COVID situation. The PowerPoints, I think, were good because it allows everybody to know basically what the outline was for the session. And I wrote to them earlier today to see if there are any written materials from the training session, because in past years, they would put together an entire book of articles that were written by the presenters. And it wasn't clear to me that that was done this year, but if it was, and we can get the book, that'll be something else that the board can look at. And Mr. Sheehan, since your office was one of the presenters, I wonder if you know anything about that.
I don't know, well, we have the materials. I don't know if they're putting it together as a book, as they have done in the past, but I will inquire.
Well, if it's available online, I'm not looking to get an actual physical book, but if there's any
Yeah,
online
so you
materials
have those, yes, those materials are available, yes.
other than the PowerPoint, right?
President Hayes, I think it was sent in the subsequent mailing that they announced to us today, July 17th. Look for that mailing from the School Board Association, and those notes that you're requesting, I think, are included in there. I downloaded them, and the way you're describing it seems like what I downloaded.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So now we're on to items for discussion. Do you want to
Well,
start us off?
actually, we're on to public commentary, and we did have two email-ins to the clerk.
Okay,
One of them I'm going to actually address in comments later, so I'm going to put that one on the side, but we did have a request from a resident for the board to take a look at policy 3180 regarding the naming of school facilities. So I did want to just let that resident know that the board is looking at that policy at this time and did in fact discuss it tonight and plans to continue discussions for our next meeting. So that is one thing I wanted to take care of with regard to public commentary, and now I am ready to move on if you are.
okay. So now you're at F.
I am at F1, school reopening update. So, our first item for discussion is the update on our plans for reopening our schools. On July 13, 2020, Governor Cuomo announced new data-driven guidance for reopening schools in New York State. He indicated that schools in a region can reopen if that region is in phase 4 of reopening and its daily infection rate remains below 5% or lower, using a 14-day average. And that schools will close if the regional infection rate rises above that mark on a 7-day average after August 1st. The governor said he will make the formula determination during the week of August 3rd through 7th, I believe. Late last week, much later than promised, the district did receive formal guidance from New York State Education Department regarding the reopenings of schools, and that guidance was in the form of a 145-page document. Fortunately, we had been working on reopening and using a compilation of guidance from 3 other states, Maryland, Connecticut, and New Jersey. We have developed 5 committees made up of district faculty and staff to examine various reopening matters. The committees and their focus are general health and safety guidelines, social distancing solutions for our secondary schools, social distancing solutions for our elementary schools, facilities, cleaning and disinfecting, and remote teaching and learning. These committees have been hard at work with recommendations due to me at the end of this week. I can tell you that currently, with New York State social distancing requirements in place, we are looking at reopening under a hybrid model. We are currently exploring a model where general education and inclusion students are in school for in-person teaching 2 days per week and remote learning 2 days per week. Special students in special classes would be in school for in-person teaching 5 days per week. We are exploring a fixed schedule model that looks like Monday, Tuesday for one cohort of students and Thursday, Friday for the other cohort of students. On that 5th day, Wednesday, we would be planning, it would be for planning, remote learning, and deep cleaning of our schools. We're in the process of determining what the best split for cohorts, students in cohorts would be using last name and household. This way, older siblings could assist with younger sibling childcare. And also, we are told that having a fixed schedule will help parents with arranging outside childcare. Recognizing that about 60% of our families are prepared to send our children back to school wearing a face covering, while 20% are not and 20% are unsure, our plan will need to be flexible for our families, allowing for a smooth transition to and from the hybrid model to total remote or in-school, in-person instruction. Friday, as I mentioned, I will receive recommendations from these committees, which will form the base and structure of our reopening plan. Next week, our 4 board advisory committees will meet for the sole purpose of reviewing these committee recommendations and to provide feedback to administration. And administration will then develop a draft preliminary plan to be submitted and posted as SED deadline is July 31st, and then for the board's review on August 5th. The draft plan will detail the reopening model so our families can plan appropriately, with the plan being a fluid document, which with much of the work following regarding the details and our implementation protocols, which will occur between now and schools opening. We will begin doing this detailed work through the established committees. However, as we proceed, these committees may be expanded in membership, or new committees may need to be formed and developed. So at this point, I welcome any questions the board may have regarding my update. Ms. Ancona?
Ms. Ancona?
Thank you. There was a little feedback from yesterday's Zoom meeting about, we know that it's fluid, but some parents said it wasn't very clear if they decided to opt out, if that would be okay if we did reopen. Is there a plan for that, and do we know the legality of that?
Could you repeat that? And then first, let me preface my comments by saying, you know, I meet and speak with the committee leaders, you know, a few times per week. So that's why I know where we are. But the committee recommendations have not come in yet.
Right.
So I just want to preface my comments by, this isn't factual, but it looks like this is where we're going.
When you ask your question again, could you come up with another phrase other than opt out? Because that triggered in my mind testing issues, and I don't think that's where you were going.
Thank you. So is there another option? If parents, let's say we open and everything's back to normal, if parents are uncomfortable sending their kids back to school, is there any room for them to continue distance learning? It didn't seem clear the other day, and I don't know if we even have a clear answer for that.
Yeah,
Let's see.
and I don't have a clear answer for that, but I will tell you that our goal is to be flexible, because we recognize that, you know, things can change at a drop of a dime. We clearly know that from the information we're getting from the state. So we need to be prepared to move from hybrid to remote, to in-person, regardless of what those changes are. And so do our families. We also recognize that families don't want to come back. And we're going to need to address that too. And we need to be prepared for them to say, I'm not ready to come back. I want to remote learn only. And then maybe at some time during the day, they could say, guess what, I'm ready to come back. So we're looking at that. I don't have a clear, concrete answer for you, but that is something that we are trying to do. We're trying to develop a plan that we can pivot with smooth transitions for our families and our students, from regardless of what the situation is, whether it's self-imposed or state-imposed.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Yes, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. First, I want to start off with saying that I appreciate everything that all of the committees are doing, whether you are an administrator, a teacher, a parent, a staff member, a community member. This is a huge undertaking for anybody involved. It's not something that we could have planned for. I've spent weeks upon weeks reading through the documentation, or days upon days, I should say, not even weeks, reading upon the documentation that's come out from the governor or from the state department. And it's a lot. It definitely is a lot, and it's a very overwhelming task. So first, I want to start off by thanking all of the individuals that have been taking part in these committees. With that said, I know that our advisory committees will be meeting next week. I'm hoping, I know that on Friday that you'll be getting some information. I'm hoping that maybe we can have some information prior to meetings so that we can maximize our time. With that said, I know that some of the things that you said that you had, some of our committees have been looking into the other states, and I appreciate that and their guidelines. I know that some of our local districts across the island have been starting to come up with their plans, and putting those plans out. So I'm hoping that we're able to look at those. I've been looking into a lot of them, and they really do have some great ideas, and I think collaboratively, because this isn't a South Country thing, this is a New York State nationwide thing, I think we can all learn from each other. Again, that said, the Monday, Tuesday cluster, and Thursday, Friday cluster, I'm extremely happy to see. I know that not all districts are looking into that, but I think for the well-being, if we are looking into a hybrid model, I do think that that is probably our best move to go for the safety and clustering our children together. So I'm happy to see that we're looking into that model. And again, if we could just get the information prior to our meetings so we can maximize our time together, I really think that would be beneficial. And again, thank you to everyone that's been involved in creating these plans. I know it's a huge undertaking. It's hours upon hours of reading, of guidelines. I'm sure Mr. Sheeran can kind of attest to that. I'm sure he's been very, very busy going through everything as well. It's been a lot, and it's, the timeline is very, very hectic, unfortunately, but thank you.
You're welcome. And yes, I will try to get as much information out as I can ahead of time. And just so the board knows, I meet with the Brookhaven Cluster Superintendents weekly on this matter only. So we are speaking, sharing, and talking. Nobody wants to be an island out there either. So, but we have had those conversations, and we'll continue to do that.
Gina, did you have a question?
No, I'm good, sorry.
That's okay. That's all right. Okay, I have just one question. So is legal taking a look at the plans that are coming through to make sure that we haven't violated anything collective bargaining wise, and that we are adhering to the standards that have been put forth?
Well, they haven't, but they will. Some of the items that we have in there may be required for bargaining. That'll be up to council when we do go that route. I don't think so, but certainly once we do have a plan, council will be reviewing the plan. And so the board knows that, because you've seen the client memos, we've been getting a lot of counsel from council with regard to the reopening.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good to move on?
Yes,
Madam President?
please.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next item, and that is the school comprehensive education plans. Our next item for discussion are the plans for the district, Brookhaven Elementary School and Belport Middle School. These improvement plans, as you know, are a result of Belport Middle School and Brookhaven Elementary School being designated as comprehensive support and improvement schools by the State Education Department last school year. With the COVID-19 closure, the designation was carried over, and we are in our second year of designation. There are 3 plans of action for the board's review. One is for the district, one is for the middle school, and one is for Brookhaven Elementary School. Each plan has been developed by the district and/or building team in accordance with the state education requirements and tenets of effective school systems, which we will be measured on. These plans require Board of Education approval prior to being sent to the state, and that'll be by August 1st. However, they are not final because the State Education Department then reviews the plans and provides feedback and edits prior to accepting and finalizing them. And from our experience last school year, our plans came back with some edits, and we needed to make those corrections and send them back. I offer these 3 plans for the board's approval and discussion.
Any questions before we take a vote to approve?
Just have one comment. Perhaps the council can speak to the fact that because of COVID, the state is not, is holding status quo. Designations are not initiating any new designations for the period of time. Could you speak to that, John?
Sure. The COVID-19 has impacted all measures of student performance and progress and the ability for school districts to report measures. So they have, the state has put a moratorium on changing these plans. I think it's also a large degree of function of the priorities from SED have shifted towards the school reopening from these plans. So they have put a hold on this issue for now.
So we're still required to submit them, but we're basically in a holding pattern at this point.
Correct, you're still in a holding pattern. Everything is just, a moratorium on changes right now.
In preparation for these plans, we had virtual meetings with the State Education Department. I don't know if you got a motion. Did you
I
get a
don't-
motion?
I didn't make the motion or
Okay.
have anybody make it yet, but need to have someone make a motion to approve the school comprehensive education
Mr.
plans that are in items F2.
Ms. Ruda?
Ms. Aruda, and second, Ms. Ancona. Any discussion or questions? All in favor, raise your hand. I see all hands raised. It's unanimously approved.
Thank you. And moving on to item 3, the next item for discussion is the transportation efficiency study we completed last school year. The efficiencies and route changes suggested in this study could yield the district a cost avoidance of $500,000 to $600,000 in transportation services. While most efficiencies are a result of schematic route changes, 2 are a result of services that should not be provided. Specifically, we are currently providing service to 2 students who are attending a school outside the board's 25 mileage limit. Those services must discontinue. And in the second area, we are providing home-to-school pickups and drop-offs for some 21 students attending St. Anthony's High School who live greater than the 25-mile limit. While these students are entitled to transportation, they are not entitled to home school pickups and drop-offs, and we will need to create a central pickup for these students moving forward. Relying on previous service providers and not having our own transportation coordinator is more than likely why these inefficiencies exist. Moving forward, any and all changes or route additions will need to be reviewed and approved by our transportation consultant, who happens to be the consultant who prepared this study for us, and that is School Source Technologies. We plan to implement these suggestions and anticipate the cost avoidance of $500,000 to $600,000, which we have budgeted. With these unexpected funds, I would like the board to consider a future budget transfer which would permit our move to one-to-one devices for every student in grades K to 12 for the 2020-21 school year. We're currently planning for one-to-one devices in grades 3 through 12, but with additional funds, we will be able to extend that to kindergarten through grade 2, and all of our students will then have a Chromebook to take home and back and forth with them in the event remote learning continues and we move in and out of hybrid to remote to in-person instruction. I offer this to the board's discussion. No actions required, but I would like some direction because if the board agrees with me in making the transfer, we need to move forward with orders.
Ms. Aruda, you had your hand up?
Yes, just a quick question. Outside of COVID, does this program review take into account parents that choose not to use a bus, but are entitled to it? I know
Yes.
that we have many families within the district lines that choose not to use that bus. Like I know myself personally with my own children and a few others, you know, out of courtesy, we will call in August and say my child is not taking the bus. Does that take into account, and I don't know exactly how many families, if it does?
Yes, it takes into account ridership as well. We do provide these spots for individuals that are taking the bus or not. We have not looked at who's not riding the bus and adjusted our routes therefore. These are strictly schematic routes that didn't make sense where buses were connected. It wasn't affecting ridership.
Maybe moving forward outside of COVID, obviously that's going to change things a little bit, and once we go back, that may be something that we need to look into, because I do know that there are several families that choose not to use the bus and choose to do a drop-off pickup, whether it be scheduling and things like that, that may play into it. I personally know a few, so there may be a lot more out there. So moving forward after the situation that we're currently in, we may want to look into that as well to see if there's a savings.
Yeah, we're going to have to take a close look at transportation. It's interesting, you know, going back to item 1, you know, we're taking a real close look at where we're going to divide those cohorts because it's important, right, in terms of who's coming in, who's not coming in. So it'll be by last name, and we also need to look at household because some households have different names in them. And then with 40% of your folks not you wanting to use the bus and 50% on the time at a time coming in on the bus, we have to look at the ridership because there may be additional savings that could be made, or there may be changes that need to be made to provide for social distancing. So we know we need to take a close look at that as a result of where we may be moving forward. But thank you.
So this, you've offered for discussion, but
Yes.
there's no action that is necessary?
There's no action, but I see Ms. Felice has her hand up.
Yes, she does.
With the Chromebooks and the one-to-one availability, how do we address connectability to students at home and then engagement?
Yeah, so clearly, I don't know if you've read the state guidance, it's vitally important to do that, and we do plan on doing that. Having the device in hand is obviously the number one issue, and then we will start drilling down where service is not. And we are going to look at things such as hotspots and et cetera, in terms of making sure everyone does have that service. I can't speak to where we will be yet, but we recognize that some folks do not have internet access, and we will be looking to address that the best we can.
And then with respect to my earlier question about consideration for the pre-K busing, this report didn't answer that. Do you have any comment?
No, but I think what President Hayes was indicating, that there is a savings based on the study, a savings that's probably a little bit more than pre-K busing costs to begin with. It's not my recommendation to move that money into pre-K busing, because I think the bigger issue is making sure we have a device in every child's hand in this district. That's one of our lessons learned in moving to remote, that everyone did not have a device. And quite honestly, in COVID, 40% of our folks are going to use the bus. So why put that money there when we know it will be used in a one-to-one device?
It's a matter of prioritizing.
Yeah, it's a matter of prioritizing, and your earlier question had to do with savings as a result of school closure, and were we looking at those things? And yes, we have been looking at those things, but I got to tell you, COVID, this plan, a lot of funds are getting pushed to things that are necessary, such as disinfecting instruments, whether they're handheld or total units. PPE is very expensive too in the quantities that we need to buy. So any efficiencies that we may have made from the closure are certainly going to preparing for the opening.
Okay, understood. Just wanted to understand. Thank you.
Mr. Trent?
I have a question. Can this efficiency study be done in any other area of the district, or is it just strictly for transportation?
Well, this is specific to transportation. This is this company's specialty. And you listen, you could certainly look at services that may be like transportation to do something, but you know, I don't know if there are any other companies out there that might do that and what they would do it for. You know, clearly, you know, not having a coordinator and someone designing the routes and overseeing the routes is why we have the inefficiencies that we have. Fortunately, we've employed a consultant that is not only helping us with the RFPs as we design them when we go for proposals, but is also has a service where he does this. And I would suggest we do it every few years, just to make sure we are efficient. But I don't anticipate us being down this road again, considering all changes and route additions would have to go through the consultant who's recommending these efficiencies. So I'm confident moving forward we'll be in good shape with our transportation services.
Ms. Ancona?
So if we go ahead with these changes to put them towards Chromebooks, it would be for September that each kid would get a Chromebook?
Yes, provided we can get them, and we believe we can.
That would be great. I would rather see that than anything, because I know even, you know, with having multiple children in the household and parents working from home, very difficult for these kids to log on, and, you know, I don't like seeing my son spend hours and hours at a time, but at least they can share it, go back and forth, and now they won't have to. So they could just get it all done at once, and it would be great. And they could have it even if we're in full-time school for homework.
No, yeah, one-to-one means it goes to and from school with you.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
On that note, I'm a little bit off topic, but when you're talking one-to-one, then you are speaking about moving from class, just to clarify for the community, you're also speaking about moving from class to class with that one particular Chromebook. I just want to clarify that for the community.
It's a personal Chromebook, yes.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify that so that everyone understood that. Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, do I have the go-ahead to plan for K to 2?
I think you do. Do you need a motion?
No, I just would like a nod,
guidance?
so when I show up with a big transfer, you.
Yeah, I was watching everybody while you were talking, and it seems that you do have the go-ahead to use the savings from
Okay,
the transportation for the Chromebooks.
wonderful, thank you. Moving on to our next item for discussion, which is the Board Audit Committee membership. We discussed this item at our last meeting and agreed to move the item to this meeting for further discussion. As the board knows, all schools are required to have an audit committee, which must consist of 3 members at minimum who are not employees of the district. When considering school audit committee membership, the board has these 3 options: the entire board as a whole as the committee, a subcommittee of the Board of Education, or an advisory committee that may include or be composed entirely of persons other than the board members, if, in the opinion of the board, such membership is advisable to provide accounting and auditing expertise. Previous audit committee membership was a combination of community members and board trustees. I offer this item for the board's discussion and consideration in committee membership moving forward. We have not approved an audit committee as of yet.
Going back to our last meeting when this subject was brought up, did you give some thought to basically asking existing audit committee members whether they want to proceed, and also for the ones who have served in the past and any new ones, whether or not we're going to look at resumes or credentials of some sort to verify that they have background that would be beneficial to a fully functioning audit committee?
I did, but I did not reach out to anyone because I felt the board should first consider what their structure is. My recommendation for the board's consideration is to go with the option where you have a portion of the board and then 1 or 2 community members with expertise. I would suggest the board president and your current members of your finance and facilities committee. That's 2 or 3 trustees altogether, and then 1 or 2 community members who have expertise. And if the board decides on that format, then I would suggest we reach out to the community and ask folks to apply and share with us what their expertise are. And then the board make a decision on, whether you want 1 or 2 folks on it with you. That would be administration's recommendation, but obviously that is up to the board.
I like what you just outlined, but I want to ask which board members are on the facilities and
So
finance.
right now, I believe it's Mr. Parker and Mr. Pacini.
Okay,
And you as the sitting person that can go everywhere would be on there as well.
Okay. All right, so we would do that plus a couple of community members.
Yeah, and of course, it has to be someone that's not an employee.
Right.
Excuse me, did Mr. Pacini express interest in joining this committee before we decide tonight?
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah. Well, you know what? The rule is if you're not here, you're on the committee.
Oh, okay.
No, I did not speak to Mr. Pacini about it.
Well, maybe we could do this and just have it, contingent upon his agreeing to serve on that committee and, that he would have the time to attend the meetings. And if not, we'll come back and we can reevaluate, find someone else who might like to sit
And I
in.
think we could
Yeah.
probably plan the audit committee meetings around the finance and facility meetings right? We have 6 finance and facility meetings, and you only have a couple free audit committee meetings, right? We can probably work it out so they're the same day, so, it's not as big of a, commitment, so.
In fact, serving on the audit committee probably does require less work from the members than any of the other committees.
Right.
It really just means attending the meetings, hearing what our assistant superintendent for business has to report, and also hearing the reports from the auditors and what they recommend. Okay, Ms. Felice, you had your hand up?
Yes, thank you. Also in the trainings, there was a lot of discussion about the audit committee. The audit committee is actually the only committee that we're required to have as a school board. We have many more advisory committees, which is good. But, and there was discussion as to how the makeup of those boards, of those committees should look. Whether it be all, it could also be all board members, which I think we discussed the last time that we wanted to see a combination. I do support having the president on the audit committee. And I would agree with Ms. Ancona that we should reach out to those other individuals on the facilities and finances committee to see their interests first. And then we could always go to another board member, but I do agree getting credentials from those currently sitting and if they plan on proceeding, and then we can make our decisions going forward if we have any other interests.
Can I just clarify from your comments that when we talk about the existing committee members, it's not like a lifetime legacy to serve on a committee just because you have. And one of the reasons to look at this again actually came out of an audit committee meeting where there was discussion about using a different firm to be the auditor, and the recognition that it's a good thing to change auditors periodically because otherwise people become a little too comfortable or they may overlook things. I think that's true also of the audit committee members, and that having new members come in on a periodic basis would be a benefit to us.
What is our requirement for changing? Is it 5 years, changing external auditors? Is it every 5 years?
I think that's been the
Yes,
period
yes,
that
every 5
has
years.
been used.
Every 5, okay.
You're not required to change, but you're required to put out an RFP.
RFP, correct. So then I would support the comments of the president that yes, in analyzing the results of our overview, that we would be, proactive in that regard into changing just like we would the external auditor.
So,
what is the board's thoughts, one or two, or just look at who we have, and then talk about a community member? We could wait and see what you have.
why don't we put this over, since we don't have an audit committee meeting pending right now,
Mhm.
put this over to the next meeting, because I spoke to a community member who would be a very good member, but of course not knowing exactly what the board was going to decide about composition. And it does give the opportunity to reach out to people who have served and see if they really want to continue. And if so, they could, put in their written statement about their credentials and their interests. And if they choose not to, then we will thank them for all the years of service of being on the committee. So I think we're talking about having one or two community members. I think I'd aim for 2 at least. And hopefully we will get some interested parties who would really be interested in this issue.
So I'll put something on the website
Yes.
that we're seeking,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And we will also reach out to those that are already.
Okay.
It seems like Mr. Pacini and I both agreed to serve on this audit committee, based upon what I'm reading now from our agenda. If we go to the board audit committee and, tap on that, we notice that, I know I agreed, and so did, Chris, had agreed and expressed interest in serving on this committee at the time, so And it's just to answer Gina's question earlier as to whether Chris,
Well, that looks like it was from last year's board meeting. Is that your notes, Dr. Gianni, from last year's, when this was addressed last year?
no, not last year, that's this year.
Oh, it says, my notes from last school year reflected Mr. Pacini, Mr. Parker, and Mr. Santino was interested.
We're on, that's the legislative. You guys,
Oh.
you guys moved ahead.
Hey, I was just there though.
Okay. So,
Okay.
Mr. Parker, you're refreshing everybody's recollection that you and Mr. Pacini had already said that you would serve on the audit committee.
I think he means the finance.
That is right, yeah.
Or are you saying you and Mr. Pacini had said you were gonna serve on the finance and facilities committee?
I thought it was both, but. well, whatever.
Both? Okay. Well, we're gonna take a break on this anyway, so that we can clarify with Mr. Pacini if he wants to be on this committee. And then we'll take that into account when we structure the new and improved committee.
Okay. Anything further on that? Okay, so now we move to the legislative committee. Our next item for discussion is forming a legislative committee. The board began discussing forming this committee last school year, but never quite finished with the COVID-19 school closure. My notes from last year reflect that Mr. Pacini, Mr. Parker, and Mr. Santo had expressed interest in serving on that committee at that time. If the board would like to move forward, the board needs to determine what membership will be and decide on a committee chair who will guide committee work on behalf of the board. The board may also wish to consider appointing a trustee advocacy liaison for the New York State School Boards Association. I offer this for the board's discussion.
And I do know that Mr. Pacini has said he's interested in serving on the legislative committee and said he would be happy to chair it if needed. I also know that Ms. Felice had indicated an interest in it, and she has been on the strategic planning committee even during her one-year hiatus from the board. I think that's indicative of her interest. I don't know if there are any other trustees who would want to be a liaison to the School Boards Association. But Mr. Pacini has been doing that, and he has been reporting back to us.
Yeah, that's with the board, right? That's not, I think this is different,
So, okay.
right?
I do think
Well,
that Mr.
this
Pacini has,
is-
for several years, have looked into doing legislative committee, him and Mr. Santo. So although he's not here, and I don't want to speak on his behalf, I do know that that has been coming up over several years. So, I'm sure that Dr. Gianni, you can attest to remembering some of that.
Oh, no, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Santo and Mr. Pacini has
Been going on
always expressed an
for
interest.
several years.
I was just
so,
saying, I don't know, I think there's a difference between what Mr. Pacini's doing now with the Nassau Suffolk School Boards Association and the advocacy liaison with the New York State School Boards Association. I just
Oh,
wanted
okay.
to see, to show the difference between those two.
I see, you
Okay.
clarified
Yeah.
that. So for the advocacy piece, would that be someone from this newly created or active legislative committee that would be in contact with Albany or other levels of government as needed?
I believe so, because my understanding of that, that advocate, they would be getting all the news alerts from the New York State School Boards Association with regard to legislative items. And I know Ms. Felice did look at it, so maybe she could speak to it better than I.
Well, just, I do want to speak to the advocacy position is different than what Mr. Pacini is doing currently. He also got a copy of the agenda, and I don't know if he conveyed with you that he is interested in that as well. I would be interested if the board so desires, and I would be interested in the committee itself. I think in the writing though, it says the committee decides its chair. Is that what I read? We don't have to decide the chair today.
Yeah, good, that's a good point.
That's, okay,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, so yes, I am interested in as well.
all right.
And
So
would,
are we thinking this is a newly created committee, or is it gonna be a subcommittee of the strategic planning?
it was subcommittee of strategic
It
planning.
it was, and then last school year, we talked about putting it by itself. I have no problem where it is, but I prefer a board trustee chair it.
Okay, I just don't wanna see it
Yeah.
drift the way it's been drifting for the last
Well, I
couple of
think
years.
I think once we assign a trustee chairing it, I think that's done drifting. But we can leave it as a subcommittee with, and it certainly can be chaired by a trustee still. So we can do that.
You know, we could tell strategic planning to put together the legislative and advocacy committee and to be sure that there are trustees involved there and that a trustee would chair the committee.
So let me ask, what do you think the membership would look like for the legislative committee? Because I'm hearing that we possibly have 3 trustees interested. I don't know if Mr. Parker is still interested. Last year he was. So we have 2 or 3 trustees interested. And then how do we get further members? I imagine you'll want either community or staff, volunteers. Did you have any thoughts on that? Do you wanna leave that to strategic planning to talk about?
It's a little easier to answer that question if you view it as a subcommittee of the strategic planning committee, because then you can look to community members and staff members to see who would be interested in this. And then for the trustees who have indicated an interest in being on the committee, it actually might make sense to see how they think a structure could work.
Mm-hmm. Are we looking for that now or later?
And I think that right now, without Mr. Pacini here, can't very well discuss it.
Okay.
Okay, so can we
Bring it back?
bring it back for more discussion at the next meeting?
Yes.
I'm for bringing it back, however, we have these meetings now, we have an agenda now, and if people aren't here, I mean, we have 6 people that are here, and because one person isn't, we shouldn't put things on the back burner.
So along with what Ms. Felice says, I don't see the issue with appointing the advocacy person now,
Oh, okay.
right? Because that at least gets us the update, right?
Okay, thank you for raising that. So we're gonna break it into 2 components. One is to appoint a trustee to be our liaison for advocacy purposes. And then we will pursue the structure of a legislative committee, whether it's gonna be a subcommittee of strategic planning. And since that strategic planning is meeting next week,
Yeah, but
too much on the agenda?
yeah, next week is
Is out,
reopening.
okay.
But August, we're meeting right pretty soon, we can put it then,
Okay.
yeah.
And we could then look at the structure of the strategic planning committee and how it would interact with maybe a subcommittee or whether it should just be separate. So with regard to the advocacy role, I'm reading Mr. Pacini's email, and he's just saying he's interested in serving on the legislative committee. But he did not make mention of the advocacy position, and I had gotten an email from Ms. Felice earlier indicating her interest in the advocacy component. So maybe that's something we could go ahead and do?
Yeah, I would
Well, we
take,
have it.
who is anyone else interested beside Mrs. Felice? and if not, I would,
Okay. Is anybody other than Ms. Felice interested in the advocacy? I see a vigorous head no. And I don't see anyone else who's interested, so I guess, do we need a motion?
yeah, I
to do
think
this?
I
Why
think
don't
we
do
should take a
that?
motion vote because that's kind of what the language is with the School Boards Association. This way it's an official appointment.
Okay, so I need a motion
I
to,
like,
see, you keep doing that on all the motions before we even express what they are. We have, so I have a motion to appoint Cheryl Felice as the
Advocacy
advocacy
liaison
liaison
to the New York
to-
State School Boards
to New York
Association.
State School Boards Association. And I see everybody has their hand up except for Ms. Felice. Okay, a belated hand raise.
Page five, Clyde got the motion.
Was there a motion in a second? I'm sorry.
We got a
It's
second.
Clyde and then Gina. Motion was Clyde and then Gina was the second.
Okay, so
Alright, thank you.
Gina came in as the second, and then our vote was all hands up, including Ms. Felice's hand, right?
Yeah.
Okay, then we have Ms. Felice is appointed as our liaison.
Thank you very much, thank you.
And we will bring the other items back to both the strategic planning and the board in its entirety. Okay? The next item for discussion is Board Policy 3170, correspondence to school board. A trustee has requested the policy be reviewed to reflect current times, so before referring the policy to strategic planning, I placed it on the agenda so I can get some further guidance from the board, and I can share that guidance with strategic planning. I offer this for discussion. Ms. Aruda, I know that you were the one that did indicate. I don't remember if your email went to the entire board, so I don't know if you'd like to comment.
It did go for the entire board. The current policy was written in 2012. It really does just refer to letters and stationery and leaves out the idea of emails and potentially social media that we currently have now. So I think it's something for consideration for the board's discussion and for strategic planning, as well as B and C seem to be a little convoluted where it says to use one of the following appropriate options, and B is followed with an and. So that was my thought process in bringing this up for a review and possible change. Revision, not change.
Okay.
May I ask a question? Through the chair, may I ask a question of Mr. Ruda? Does this have to do with the parents' page on, has anything to do with the parents' page on Facebook?
I do think that that's something that we can encompass into this now. Again, this is 2012 that it was written in. But I also think the policy in and of itself just simply says letters, where I think that we do need to indicate that we are referring to emails as well, since that is the mode of communication predominantly. And now with social media being there, I do think that when we're talking about correspondence to the community, that using any types of social media may also want to be considered in this policy as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you raised that. We've discussed this before, that members of the Board of Education who don't have children currently in the school are prohibited from being on the parents' page. So you have a majority of members on the board that are not permitted on the parents' page, so we don't see that communication and therefore can't respond to it. We don't have a social media page that's monitored by the Board of Education or the president in which to answer to. So I think it's all encompassing that because of social media, that we do start to look at those answers and get a more concise response on behalf of the board, which in this missive, in this policy is the board which I support. And so we move along those lines to try to we would have to come up with our own Facebook Twitter, whatever account we decide we want to have monitored, so that members could access the Board of Education for questions. I think this also goes hand in hand with accessibility. Some of the training discussion was really encouraging enhanced communication, which I think we all shared the benefit of the town hall that was held last week. It was very beneficial, even though there were glitches, because we're all managing and learning glitches now with virtual and Zoom meetings. But anyway, we could get communication out to the community and have them respond back to us so that we make sure all our stakeholders are consulted, their concerns are listened to, is only going to benefit us in the long run.
I'm listening to what the other trustees said, and I'm wondering if we've really got two policy issues. One is 3170 that seems to be a bit outdated given the heavy reliance now on email as opposed to the standard hard copy of letters that are sent by the US mail. So that's one issue. And then the other is use of Facebook for communication purposes. And I think that's something that we ought to be considering as to whether that's good and whether that's a good way for us to interact with the community or not. Because I can see some drawbacks from it, and currently the way things are, a lot of people are on Facebook interacting among themselves, but the issues are not being presented to the board or to the superintendent. So it's like we don't even know that there are issues out there because it's all an internal discussion. And I don't know how to deal with that, and I don't know if the suggestion of having a Facebook group for the board would help with that at all, or it may even be one more layer of things that complicates communication. But if you agree that these are almost separate issues, one is review policy 3170 that really refers only to hard copies of correspondence, and send that to strategic planning to see whether we should include electronic correspondence, by email. I think that one's a pretty straightforward thing. We can go ahead and agree that we ought to have strategic planning weigh in on what they recommend there. Would everybody agree with that issue?
Mhm.
I think so.
Yeah.
It looks like everybody's nodding. And then we've got the other issue about Facebook and the different groups that are on it, and if I would ask how you think we ought to proceed with regard to that. And I've got two hands that went up simultaneously.
Let's go first.
So, Ms.
Maybe we can have John weigh in. I'm sure that this is something that he's seen before. So maybe John can weigh in on the policy as to where he believes that policy should be or added to this. I'd like to hear his input.
So this is the policy with regard to social media. I'm trying to clarify what you're asking John to comment on.
Well, we're speaking about, we kind of lumped something together and we're discussing whether this is going to be together or separate.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'm asking John to clarify where he believes these two issues should be, if it should be as one, as correspondence to the school board, or if it should be two separate policies.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying.
So, this policy is the typical community relations, board president response to correspondence. It is relatively straightforward, in terms of the boards, looking at how correspondence comes in from the district clerk or comes in directly to the board, whether it's email or correspondence, and how that is addressed, and this is correspondence to the board. When you look at the issue of social media, and you look at the issue of the board's overall communication issues, it probably is an extension of this. It's up to the board's really preference in terms of whether this is just solely related to inbound communication, and you have a separate policy that deals with your social media policy, your social media platforms, and the manner in which you communicate with the public. Many school boards have opened up the social media page in terms of providing a way to receive more information, and really that's an extension of this policy. If you're looking for more of a two-way communication, that in my mind raises a lot more issues. I haven't seen too many boards go to that step, and that's a major policy decision for the Board of Education, a major policy step, which I would like to have an opportunity to provide the board with input on those issues surrounding communication out to the public, other than through your board meetings.
And I think that that's the root of some of the concerns in this discussion. So if you could give us some guidance on that, that would be helpful.
Certainly.
But tonight, even without that guidance, is everybody already in agreement that we ought to refer 3170 to the strategic planning and just keep it, the 3170, which is written correspondence, and just have that looked at as to whether it needs to be updated to include the electronic type correspondence. And then we can deal with the other issue after Mr. Sheehan has given us some guidance for the social media platforms. Cheryl, Ms. Felice said okay, Ms. Aruta's nodding. I see everybody but Mr. Trent.
Yeah, no.
You're not,
That's fine with me.
it's okay. Then everybody agreed that 3170 should be referred over to strategic planning for discussion and advice.
Okay. Thank you.
And Mr. Sheehan, you've got more homework.
So more homework. And our final item for discussion is our board retreat for our new board. Last meeting, we agreed to hold 1 or 2 evening mini retreats, and the board asked me to suggest dates for the board's consideration. Those dates were suggested, and they were September 30th and October 21st. We have 2 trustees not available on the 30th, and 1 trustee that could only be available via Zoom. However, on the 21st, it appears we have everyone available. So, I'd like to confirm the 21st, unless the board has other thoughts. And
It's
this
the 21st of what?
of October. October, I'm sorry. 21st of October, and then we would reach out to the School Boards Association. I think last time you had indicated use them again, and also reach out to the Post-Morrow Foundation to see if we can hold it there and firm everything up from 5:30 to 8:30, as I recall.
Okay,
Sound good?
that sounds good. So we're all set on that.
Yes, unless there are any other items with that. And that is all of my items for discussion.
Okay, then I think we go,
I think I go right into my consent items, right?
yes,
So,
G.
Administration recommends approval of curriculum items reflected in schedules G1 and G2.
Is there a motion to approve items G1 and G2?
I just have some discussion.
Okay, we'll get that after we get a second. So are you making the motion and Ms.
Yes, I'll make the
Felice?
motion.
Ms. Felice is seconded. Any questions or discussion? Mr. Trent?
I have a question. Dr. Gianni, who is, I guess, running the curriculum office, and where, are these recommendations coming from?
Those recommendations are coming to me, so I'm supervising curriculum right now. They're coming from the Committee on Special Education, and they are coming to me, and I am moving them forward to the board, just as Assistant Super would do.
So to clarify, these are curriculum issues that are dealt with by Committee for Special Education.
Yes, these are all recommendations of the Committees for Special Education.
Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. I think all hands, I don't see Ms. Ancona and I don't see Mr. Parker. Okay, you raised your hand. Okay, there are 5 in favor of approval. Anybody voting against this?
Ms. Ancona is frozen, she just got.
Oh, I see, she was frozen.
Yeah, so Ms. Parker is absent for this vote.
Okay. All right, so anyway, approval is given then for the items G1 and G2.
Okay, and moving to personnel, administration recommends approval of personnel items reflected in H1 through H6.
Someone make a motion to approve items H1 through H6. Mr. Parker, seconded by Mr. Trent. Questions or discussion? Ms. Aruda?
No,
No?
I'm sorry.
No question? Okay. So if there's no questions or discussions, all in favor of approving these items, H1 through H6, raise your hand. I see all hands raised with Ms. Ancona absent for the vote.
And moving to business items, administration recommends approval of business items reflected in schedules I1 through I33. I'm sorry, I32.
All right. Is there a motion to approve items I1 through I32? Ms. Aruda, and second by Mr. Trent. Questions or discussion? Boy. Excuse me.
It's okay.
And that's quite a tickle you got there.
It's quite a tickle. It really is, so,
Do you want a 5-minute break? Do you want a 5-minute
no, I'm gonna, I think we're up to
We're
Up
voting.
to- Yeah, voting, yep.
County, would you let Ms. Ancona back in?
Oh, thank you. Let me see where she is. There she is. Okay. Here she is. Okay. All those in favor?
Yep.
Oh, I'm
All
sorry.
those in favor of items,
I1 through
I1
I32.
through I32, please raise your hand. And Ms. Ancona is still coming in.
He's still coming. Motion passes.
I I think
Did you
the
get a
motion
count
passed,
there?
but I'm not sure I got a
Did you get it?
correct count, because
No?
Gina's not on
sorry.
yet.
Oh, Gina's still frozen. Yeah, I don't know if she's gonna vote. She's muted. You a yes?
Are you voting yes? I think we need to let her calm
She's
down.
muted. You got on. Yeah, you're muted. You're muted. You got to
Unmute
unmute.
yourself, Gina.
Okay,
There you go.
Sorry.
okay,
Oh,
all right, are you able to vote? Are
can you just say that again? I'm sorry.
It's for items I-1 through I-32.
All business items, Ms. Uncom.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, then it's unanimously approved.
Did you get everyone now?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, next, I don't think we have public commentary, no
No, we
further
have no
questions.
public- We're closing remarks.
But before that, just to remind everybody that's listening, if you wanted to be making comments, the way to do that now is by written questions sent to the superintendent.
Nope.
No, the clerk.
The clerk, sorry. That was a test to see if everybody was listening. Questions to the clerk, and they'll be taken up at the board meeting following.
Yes, and that's listed on the meeting notice.
Okay.
And we've been doing that since we've been virtual, so the board is aware.
Okay, so we're all set on that. Do we have any closing remarks by anyone? Ms. Felice?
Yes, I will make a few closing remarks with respect to the trainings that I participated in on this week. Because I had a break in service of the 1 year, I did have to take the new training all over again that I took 3 years ago, but I was very pleased to have taken it this time, having had 3 years on the board, because I came into that training knowing much more about the district, policies, and so on and so forth. And it was conveyed to me that sitting trustees can still take the new board trustees as a refresher. I recommended to this school board association that they have a refresher course available each year for sitting trustees. It was very beneficial, especially since, things in school districts are so fluid and especially now with what we're dealing with. There was a lot of information as we discussed, and we will be discussing it further. So I just wanted to make that comment. The law conference, I thought was great. Primarily attorneys were in on the training, but they did allow other people in, and they presented it in a way that all of us understood. And it made for better teamwork. And I was very appreciative. I mentioned earlier in my opening that there is an upcoming clerks training in October, I believe the date is, and I would encourage our sitting clerk to attend that meeting, regardless if she's been on it before. I looked at the agenda already. They will be talking about the changes to the election law, and actually with regards to military ballots that have to go out. The time frame in which we adopt our budget is impacted as a result, and I'm sure Mr. Sheehan will be advising us accordingly. Again, there's just a lot of information out there that we have to stay in touch with. And I recommend that extremely highly. Just want to highlight a few things. For council, if council could bring back to us for the next time, there was discussion on voting, and what constitutes a majority, a supermajority, or those voting as duly convened, those present and voting, and then what would constitute a supermajority. I think there are some cases that board votes are very important and may require a supermajority instead of a simple majority that we may want to adopt into policy. So could you just give us the delineation between those three scenarios that I outlined, and if there's more, could you name what they would be as well for the
It'd be
board?
my pleasure. Sure.
Thank you. And I think that was it. And the Title IX, the changes to Title IX and the changes in the election law were most pressing takeaways that I got from the training.
Oh,
And again, I do want to compliment the town hall and Dr. Gianni for as much as you were navigating during the town hall, it seemed like you were very proficient in Zoom, but I think the community, as we've already identified, responded very much in time, and maybe that's more of what we do going forward to give access. And Zoom has that availability, that if people don't have to be physically present, they can just log in online in the comfort of their slippers.
And I think you just reminded me of something from the training session, and that is whether we should be looking again at any whistleblower statute or whistleblower procedures that we have on all levels. And I believe
It's
that's
on.
already been sent
on.
over to
Yep.
strategic planning to make sure we've got all of that covered.
Thank you, that's the end of my report. Thank you.
Okay, then next would be Mr. Parker. You're on mute.
I'm sorry, I have nothing to report.
Okay. Ms. Aruda?
Just real quickly, as we are dealing with a time, that is very unknown to all of us, whether we are parents, teachers, anytime there's an unknown, it can be very scary. It can cause a lot of anxiety. I'm speaking for myself, being all of three of those. I know that September will look different for all of us. I know it will look different for our children, and I know that the anxiety that it can bring. I know that we will do the best that we can, and we will rise to the occasion. I ask every single parent, every single teacher, no matter what our plan looks like, when it comes to our children, put a smile on your face, turn around to make it the best thing that it's going to be, because we will make it the best. And we will forge forward, and one day we will go back to the old norm, but right now we are in the new norm, and we just really need to celebrate it for our children's sake.
Very good.
Mr. Parker? No, Mr. I heard your voice.
Gina.
Did you have something you wanted to add? Mr.
No.
No, okay. Mr. Trent? You know
yes,
what,
I have a couple.
hold on just a minute, let me jump over you and have, Ms. Ancona, and then you can make your comments. Ms. Ancona?
Okay, I just wanted to say, because the Zoom mentioned that, I did get, so during the Zoom call, Dr. Gianni, somebody had asked about senior pictures, and it wasn't known during the Zoom call. But some of the parents did receive the paperwork today from the high school for senior pictures being next week. There's a lot of mixed feelings about it, specifically the fact that they're not gonna have cap and gown to share for graduation, photos. So with all pressures due to opening of the school and due to COVID, maybe we can make that a little later, and that way they could order their cap and gowns to make the pictures, if you could speak to Mr. Hogan. But that is a concern of many parents, that senior moment, I don't want it to be ruined before we even get to school, and then not having a cap and gown photo. And I think that's just important to start off on the right foot.
Okay, I will look into that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Trent, I held you, for last because I'm not sure whether you have any announcements about, any donations or contributions today?
I do.
Okay, good. So we saved that for last.
Thank you. So a special thank you to the Brookhaven Elementary PTA for their donation of a dogwood tree and plaque in honor of the third grade graduating class. So thank you for that. My last comment, I would just like to say, I hope everybody stays safe and takes COVID very seriously. It's not a joke. I get extremely upset when I see people play down or call it a hoax because I work in the hospital. I see the condition of COVID on the patients every day. and it's so real. So again, please stay safe and take it seriously.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
That sounded like Mr. Parker, second by,
Yeah, he beat me to the punch there.
he
Mr. Parker.
did. Well, and Ms. Aruda beat you to the second, so, Mr. Parker made the motion, Ms. Aruda seconded. No discussion or questions. All in favor of adjournment, raise your hand. Thank you very much. Stay safe, and we'll look forward to the next time.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.